All right. Good morning, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us today. On behalf of all of us behind the scenes here at ForSpace, welcome in person or via Zoom to this morning's panel discussion, Anishnabe Inakonagewin. We are coming to you live from Concordia University's ForSpace, located on unceded Indigenous lands in Tiohtià:ke, Montreal. As caretakers for the lands and waters we are meeting on, we are grateful to the Kanakahaga Nations for their teachings about the earth and our relations. At ForSpace, we work to connect people to the initiatives, research projects, and dialogues happening across the university, so we are pleased to have the opportunity to collaborate with Emilio Wawatie and the Indigenous stream of the Youth Network on this event. We are running this as a meeting, so we welcome your comments via the chat or with a raised hand. It's now my pleasure to pass it over to you, Alicia. Welcome.
Yeah, well, thank you. Gwegwe, what gonna word so Gweguga, Alicia Yunjats. So hi everyone and welcome. My name is Alicia. I'm a research assistant at the Youth Network Chair at the Indigenous Stream. And I'm just here quickly to just talk about the Stream, which is a research platform bringing together Indigenous youth, researchers and Indigenous collaborators of organizations together to collaborate on innovative projects, working towards empowering youth, and working towards decolonizing research. And so through these practices, we have amazing projects like this one that we have with Emilio today, putting together a panel to talk on governance. And so I'm just so pleased to have Emilio today. And I will just pass on the mic to you. And yeah.
Very much, Alicia. Can you hear me? Yeah, I'm good. Just want to see, I see Ryder. Is that Savanna? Yeah, okay. Oh, Natasha too. Okay, so quick, my name is Emilio Wawatie and I'm a student, researcher, and musician attending Concordia University, studying as a double major in music and First People Studies. So, throughout the summer, I conducted research into the topic of Indigenous governance and the implications that youth have had within the modern frameworks of Indigenous governance. To conclude my work for the summer, I've invited a few Algonquin-Anishnabe youth into a virtual circle in which we will discuss various aspects of Indigenous governance and what governance and politics means to them as Indigenous youth. Similar topics have come up in regards to Indigenous governance from Indigenous youth across Turtle Island. These topics range from ceremony, culture, citizenship, environmental sustainability, and language. Ooh, I need some water. Many Indigenous youth walk with one foot in the Western world and another foot in the Indigenous realm, all with concerns for the next 7 generations. Growing up, we always hear about the concerns for youth from leadership, yet action is rarely ever seen and our voices are solemnly heard. Today, there's a resurgence amongst Indigenous youth across Turtle Island to reclaim, revive, and revitalize all aspects of their identity. Within the Anishinaabe worldview, our lives are governed by the law of nature and seasonal changes that have educated us and our ancestors for millennia upon millennia. Teachings passed down from Nanabush, Muskajak, and the 7 prophets long ago, then passed on to and practiced by the Anishinaabe for 1,000 generations. The development of Anishinaabe constitutional governance is not an idea to place humans above all living things, but rather to guide our lives to live in harmony in a good way. The interconnectedness of Anishnabe Inakonagewin is rooted directly into the land. From this connection stem the importance of these principles that are intrinsically intertwined: ceremony, vision, destiny, critical thought, peace, communication, free will, policies, responsibilities, education, ethics and laws, communal reciprocity, and the environment. As humans and as Anishinaabe within the modern context, we encounter many obstacles in the process of walking in 2 worlds. Looking to strike balance in our lives as Anishinaabe, youth and younger generations are becoming more aware and attuned to 2-wide seeing and becoming more aware of the importance of balancing the 2 worlds to live in a good life, to seek minopamadzi, guardianship, stewardship, teaching, leading, and healing. It's important that youth be guided and mentored by elders and community to maintain the principles and values of Inakonagewin, to ensure that there will be leaders of tomorrow. So for this panel discussion, I've invited several Anishinaabe youth to share their perspectives and experience within this whole context, coming from varied backgrounds, ranging from formerly within band councils and community politics, and through environmental, cultural, and social activism. So I'll take this time now to have my panelists introduce themselves, however you want to go. The floor is yours. Wait, I think you're muted.
Quay kakana Savanna McGregor and Indigenous Kistabish and Donjaba. My name is Savanna McGregor. I'm from Kistabish-Anishnabe, and I am the acting Grand Chief of the Algonquin-Anishnabe Nation Tribal Council. I'm just sliding out of the youth portion of my life, my walking life, I guess. I'm becoming a woman or just an adult, but it's been an interesting path to get here, and it was very, very unexpected and very sudden, but it's also been very amazing. And my background in education is Indigenous studies and political science and French, and I always wondered why my mother kept me in like a francophone school, even though I'm an Anishnabe Kwe, and now I know, and I'm grateful for that, so that I can communicate effectively and understand the way the Quebec system and the provincial government works and doesn't work for us as Anishinaabe people on our own territories, which they do not recognize and claim as their own. So yeah, I'll leave it at that for now, and I look forward to engaging with each and every one of you, and glad that we're all on this path together. Miigwech.
Miigwech. Or Leona or Ryder, either.
Okay, I guess I'll go. Quick Kanawik. Mukuni keeps in watch now. There's no cousin. Well, boy, there's no man them. Mukundu them. Taganzi big dish taganik build the say. Well, boy, there's no man them. Kundu them. Munyak Nujba. McGill University in the Kanamagus. Kajik Kanamagyan. Menabijak Kanawik. Chagwana Chuma Biek Kanoma. Bonjour tout le monde. Je m'appelle Mukuni keeps in watch Nadwe. Mon nom anglais est Ryder Coté Natawe. Je suis Anishnabe du clan des ours, de Lac Rapide et Kitkadibi. Je suis le petit loup blanc. J'habite à Montréal pour mes études. J'ai étudié à McGill University pour être professeur. C'est très bien d'être ici avec vous autres ici. Merci d'être venus et de nous écouter. C'était un grand honneur. Kwe, hello everyone. My name is Mukuni Kipsinwach Nadwe. My English name is Ryder Coté Nadwe. I'm a North American Indian of the Anishinaabe Algonquin Nation of Kitigan-Zibi and Rapid Lake. I'm the little white wolf of the Bear Clan. I'm a third generation residential school survivor, currently living in Montreal to study at McGill University to be a gym teacher. It's a great honor to be here with you all, and I'm happy that you're here listening. And I look forward to the discussion. Miigwech.
Oh, miigwech. Leona. Leona, do you want to go? Yeah.
Okay, quick way. My name is Leona Commanda Nadishnakas, Pikwakanagan Nadojabem Makwa Nadoda. So my name is Mackenzie Leona Commando. I am from Pikwakanagan, Ontario, and I am a mother to a happy 2.5-year-old, and I also work as a PSW, and I am also a political advocate as a community member in resistance to the modern treaty negotiations with the AOO and the Canadian governments, as their effects on our community has been drastic, and detrimental to us, which
Miigwech, I really appreciate that you were able to come join us today. And so for today, the discussion, it's a little hard to kind of like divide all these aspects in terms of governance because, you know, there's so much interconnectedness in terms of our culture and how we relate everything in terms of spirituality to the natural world. So I'd like to start it off just as an icebreaker with this statement. Life as an Indigenous person is highly politicized, whether we like it or not. Our paths at times inevitably lead us to mobilization for the land, water, culture, and our rights in general. Through community engagement, education through stories around a fire, lined up and ready to stand off at a blockade or marching to Parliament Hill, Indigenous youth everywhere are leading the way. As we work to carry the fire from one generation to the next, Anishnabe youth are pushing the way forward and blazing new trails to help lead the way for others. But the reality for youth in many communities is they often go unheard or underrepresented within community governance. So my first question is, as youth, what has been your experience within the realm of Anishinaabe politics and social and environmental activism? Maybe we could just continue with the same circle, Savanna, Ryder, and then Leona.
Okay, thank you for that question. For myself, like growing up, I grew up in Kelowna, BC, and I was the only Algonquin-Anishnabe person in kind of like a very, very white town. And I always like wondered like, okay, well, I know like where I'm from and where my family is, but I'm so far away. And I got to learn a lot about the Salish culture and the interior Salish, and really appreciated having, the opportunity to still live on a reserve and just go across the bridge to go to school with the settler population on those lands. So what brought me there was West Bank's self-government agreement. My mother got an opportunity to work there as their senior researcher. So then I got to see, while growing up, she worked there for 13 years until their self-government agreement reached royal assent. And I got to see a community take control of all of their jurisdictions, even their water rights, and really step away from the Indian Act and on their own terms through community engagement sessions, a lot of them, and a lot of families, kind of parallel to our communities. Each family has their own ways of knowing and their ways of being, because that's just how things like that work in terms of governance and decision making. So then they really work together to reach that objective. So growing up as an Algonquin person in Salish territory was eye-opening, because there's lots of parallels between British Columbia and Quebec in regards to how their lands are unceded, and there's very few or little treaties, and it opens up the world to the fight and the struggle that we have in regards to the reclamation of our lands, because we never ceded them. They're unsurrendered, but the provincial governments lay claim to it. So then that was like my big first experience in regards to governance. And in regards to like protesting and stuff like that, my first protest that I went to, I was a child, and my mother was working at the Assembly of First Nations at the time, and we were protesting the Meech Lake Accord. And I'll never forget that energy and the power and the fight and the struggle that the people who organized themselves to fight this did. And I guess being born Indigenous, you're born into politics, as you had mentioned earlier, Emilio, and just trying to figure that out, like within oneself, and trying to figure out what direction one wants to go in regards to claiming their identity and being proud of who you are as an individual, and trying to just be your best so then you can do good and be of service to your nation and your people, and in a bigger context, the Indigenous world, because we're all in this together. And it really amazes me, but not in a way that is like amazing, is how we are still fighting the same struggles that our ancestors have fought, and it's continual. And that Indigenous question, my first course in Indigenous studies at University of British Columbia, Okanagan, I was like, my professor, Tirso Gonzalez, mentioned the Indigenous question. And then I right away wanted to know, well, what's the answer? Like, what's the answer to the Indigenous question? And when I am done this, like, will I find the answer? And I guess it's different for everyone, of course, because that's how we work as collectives. We all add little pieces to the big circle that is our identities that we carry forward through our bloodlines. Is that we've got to just keep fighting and never give up and never lose hope and always have faith, so we can continue bringing the vision and our culture and the reclamation of that forward onto, so we can share that with our future generations. It's so important that we never lose sight of that. And what else? Being in the Nitakanan and seeing the files that the tribal council is working on, as they are mandated by the 7 chiefs that my tribal council represents, has been really interesting and eye-opening. Like right now we're working on a moose file and in conjunction with our peoples, and it's such a heavy file because the moose can't speak for themselves. And how do we protect our resources, or our resource that has sustained us as peoples and represents so much to us, represents just survival and using all of the animal, like making tanning hides, and just, sorry, I'm a little, I went out into the rabbit hole, but, and just seeing how the provincial government just sees it as something that will renew itself no matter how they manage it. And we're trying to get to a point where we can get our people out on the land to be like game wardens, but then within an Anishinaabe context, and also reach co-management of one section to see if that could be applicable elsewhere. It's really tough. The negotiators on the other side, of course, they're from the other side, right? And just trying to open up their eyes to our worldview and our cosmologies and how things are and how they should be within our land it's a big feat. So I'll just leave it off at that for now. And I know Ryder is a warrior and is there. I really admire watching the youth, because they remind me that the work of our ancestors has followed through, and we haven't lost those teachings, and we are keeping our voices strong and uniting and trying to do the best that we can with what we've got in this Western world.
Miigwech, Savanna, for those words. Emilio, do you mind repeating the question for me, please?
Yeah, no problem.
Rich.
Yeah, so after the statement, the question itself for this first one is, as youth, what has been your experience within the realm of Anishinaabe politics, social and environmental activism?
Okay, Rich. So growing up, I was really close to my family. I'm really grateful for that, especially my grandparents. And they always taught me, my grandparents, three of them are residential school survivors, and the last one being an Indian day school survivor. And they always taught me growing up, speak for those who can't speak and stand for those who can't stand. So that's always been what I've heard growing up. And I'd always go to these events growing up. I started as young as 10 years old, listening to my grandparents and my great aunts and uncles, their stories from residential schools, during doing their journey of Nishu, doing all these marches. And growing up, I never realized that it was politics. For me, it was just being Anishinaabe. That's what it was. That's just who we had to be, all these burdens and all these hardships we have to carry and go through. Even as a kid, you don't understand, but it's just, this is who we are. This is what we have to do. And now that I'm getting older, I am understanding a lot more and more about actual politics and what it can be. And one piece of advice my kukum gave me was, as a youth, your biggest strong point is your ability to listen. So now I hold that close to me, because now I'll go to the band meetings and I do what I can do, or I'll go to these marches to listen to other Anishinaabe people speak, and just listen to hear what they have to say, because they have that lived experience. They've walked down this road before that we haven't walked down. And so for me, my involvement is, just trying to do as much as I can by listening, taking everything in. But like you said, it's hard to be involved because we have to have one foot in the Western and one foot in the traditional, right? It's like for what we want to do, whether it be studying or work, we have to sacrifice that part of ourselves, and no one else in Canada has to make that sacrifice. It's only us as Indigenous people. We have to make that sacrifice. And, I often say that when I'm in school, I don't feel like I'm Anishinaabe. I feel like I have to put that side of me aside because I have to focus on my studies. And sorry, it's like everything is, like you said, everything's so intertwined. Everything connects. But yeah, politics, it's something. It is something. It's a lot of work. It's not easy work, but it's work that needs to be done. And but there is a shift there is a change. Growing up, I never really had any hope for the future. It was always scary. Even young, like having that sense of not having hope for the future was like it's odd, right, for a child to feel that. But the more I grew up, especially when I got to CEGEP, I did my CEGEP here in Montreal as well, and I started, meeting other people and talking to other people, and again, just listening to their stories. And that's when I had a switch, and it was like, okay, maybe I do have hope with this next generation, because there's such a big switch in mentality where people are like, hey, well, this is wrong. What's happening here ain't right. And people are finally starting to wake up. Spirits are awake, have been awoken. And so, like Savanna said, we're all coming together because we're all one people, right? Regardless of the color of our skin or where we come from, we're all from Mother Earth. We all live under the same sun. So it's important that we all come back together like this. And, if we want to speak about true traditional Anishinaabe politics, one of ours was the wampum belts. And our methods is the wampum belt. And one wampum belt, my grandpa tells a story, is the one dish, one spoon wampum. And what the dish represents was the land, the environment, and everything that it has to offer. And the spoon represents sharing, because we always shared amongst each other, whether it be community. I've heard stories of different nations sharing amongst each other. I've heard of stories where Ganikahaga, if they had a bad crop season, then Anishinaabe people bring them in their territory, come and hunt in our territory. If we had a bad hunt, then Ganikahaga would be like, well, come into our territory, hunt, and here's some of our crop. So we always shared no matter what. And but when settlers first arrived here, that spoon was taken out and a knife was put in, and that knife represents capitalism. And now you see in our day, everything's divided and everything's about money. It's about who can make the most money and, who can be out top, right? Politics. It's just about the art of getting stuff done. But as the new generation rising, our generation, I felt like my grandpa said it himself. He says, the knife is slowly being removed and the spoon is slowly being put back in. And so that for me, that's what politics is. It's really just traditional knowledge. That's for me the way I see Anishinaabe politics. It's just knowledge that comes from the land. Miigwech.
Miigwech.
Great. So for my life growing up, it was rather tragic, heartbreaking. I endured a lot of trauma growing up. And I believe a lot of what I went through and my parents and my grandparents is due to the genocidal policies within the Indian Act. And so, ever since I was young, I knew that I was Anishinaabe. We do have a handful of knowledge keepers and teachers that did support the younger generations growing up, and for that I'm very grateful. But my parents, they were practicing Catholics, and so were their parents. So my grandparents, 3 of them, they all attended Indian day school, and then their parents were residential school survivors. So my one grandma, she is actually from Wakwemkum, and she's not much of a practicing Catholic, but my grandpa was. And so they imposed a lot of those beliefs on me. And so I found it was very strange growing up with 2 different sets of beliefs, and I didn't know what to really believe in, but I more resented the Catholic, religion. And because of that, I had suffered abuse from the teachers in my school. And despite my pleas to ask to leave, my parents, they just out of respect for my grandparents, because they wanted that for me. They wanted me to learn the Catholic religion and such. So back when I was a kid, that's when the issues with the land claim negotiations process, which Canada governments call a modern treaty process, really started to kick off, as the lawyers that we seek to help us negotiate created a corporate body called the Algonquins of Ontario. And the condition of our reserve right now is very poor. A lot of us, we don't have clean drinking water, and a lot of that is due to the bacteria in the soil. Most of it is swamplands here in Pikwakanagan. And if you don't have bacteria in your water, you have uranium. And I remember that, growing up, my parents, they were also poor, lived in poverty, but they did the best they could with me. So I can remember even my water was brown at times. So now we're finally working on having a water treatment plant for us. That's in the works for another few years, but our water still remains undrinkable. So growing up with all these issues, I got to watch this corporation gain power, wealth over us. And they're doing a lot of these things for what they call non-status in this corporation. And so the process that begun in the early 2000s, so when I was just a little girl, it was very flawed and backwards. And that's when they did a lot of the enrollment process for this corporation. And the beneficiary criteria for this corporation, they can if people can claim or prove with genealogy that they are descended from a list of ancestors, this can even go back to the 16th century, they can gain membership with them. And it doesn't grant them Indian status, though. It grants them the right to hunt in our territory and vote on referendums across like the Algonquin Nation here in Ontario. So when I became a teenager, a lot of these issues were trying to, be brought to the surface, because what Canada and the Canadian governments are trying to do is, push us into a process that has extinguishment in mind. So I have looked into the different land claim negotiation processes across Canada that have occurred so far, and a lot of them are similar, but I find this one just very particular in extinguishing our rights as Anishnabe people and relinquishing our territory. And so they came out with an agreement, or the agreement in principle, and they tell us it's a non-binding legal document that it could be negotiated on and changed. However, we're still bound to the terms within it, and for some reason, the proposed beneficiaries were able to vote on it. And they have such an upper hand over us because they outnumber us by the thousands. However, our community stuck to no. We voted no on that. And so that's when I became very involved in the politics of it all, because just looking around me and seeing all the heartbreak in my own community and just seeing the effects and consequences of this corporation, it's terrible, and we have to do something about it. But in a sense, there's also a lot of powerlessness that us community members have, no matter how much we try to direct our leadership to say no, to walk away even, they just won't. And but also during that time of the AIP signing, a lot of the youth are not involved. Even myself, I had a lot of my own stuff going on. But there was a group of matriarchs in the community that did take legal action against leadership at the time. That's still all in the works. We don't really know exactly how that is progressing at this very moment. And as of right now, we have done protests within our own community and petitions sent to the chief and council. But we're still trying to discuss other avenues of what we can do next to make it more powerful, because out of the whole Algonquin territory, we're only promised 1.3% of Crown land back, and some of this land is inaccessible, no use to us, just these random little parcels of land. However, that's not what the original intention was. Former Chief Greg Starson's petition to the Canadian governments, and all this time, Algonquins have sent petitions to the government to, share this territory, have an actual agreement, but we were ignored. The British have always ignored our petitions, as they knew that they wanted our territory to be the heart of Canadian government. And this also, the first paragraph of this agreement excludes any other Algonquins of other communities within Quebec. And that is also a huge issue, because there's so many ties to each community with ours and relations. And it's just not fair, as the provincial border is colonial, and we don't recognize that as people. And so in my community, in the last couple of decades, we have lost a lot of culture, language, traditions. You don't really find any of that around. So growing up, I didn't really obtain that knowledge, even from my grandparents, because they didn't want to speak about it, or they didn't want it. Like in my grandma's words, she says it has no use in today's world. And she copes with her traumas by drinking, even still to this day. And so for myself, I am on like a journey of, I want to be involved in the activism and the politics, but then also I'm trying to learn as much knowledge as I can so I could pass it on to my son and future generations, because I believe that's how we're going to get through this. We have to reclaim what is ours as people while we're still fighting for our rights to this territory. So yeah, that's just to kind of give it a short story of it, but I could go on about this for hours.
Oh, that's perfect. I mean, just as an introduction, this really kind of helps set the tone of how things really kind of are. We're all coming from varied experiences. Of course, for myself, I'm just kind of shying out of my youth now, and I too am my family went to residential school. Ryder's actually my cousin. We're both Wawaties, and his grandfather is my grandfather's nephew. And my chum taught me a lot. He taught me a lot about old chiefs. He taught me about prophecies. He taught me about the history. And until I went to school, I spent most of my summers and winters with him. When he wasn't working in the summer, we'd be traveling around the bush, and he'd be teaching me stuff, and then I'd spend winters with him and go trapping. And when you're a kid, you don't realize these things, but like it kind of develops your capacity at a young age, and that's the important thing. Like we talk about the medicine wheel and like how there's this relationship between the generations as the generations shift, where with parents and the infants, how there's this educational system that's put there, especially when the children are in their tikanagan. They'd be placed up against a tree and watch the community work, and then they learn how to work, learn how to do things, and then eventually learn how to integrate themselves in a good way. And then as we get older into our our rebellious age, into our teenagers, we become closer and more guided by our elders. And so I think that it's important that we always remember, as a family, as a community, and as a nation, that each of us, each member of a nation, comes with their set of skills. Like we as individuals don't have to be the jack of all trades and a master of none. I mean, you can be, but you don't have to put all that weight onto yourself, right? And I've experienced it myself, where, of course, we're trying to maintain, the momentum of of standing up for what's right for the culture, the land, and everything. But then we're trying to, make our life, achieve our education, and then, in this capitalistic world, we want to get like a stabilized job and stabilized income, but yet we also want to maintain our identities and our language and our culture. And so there's really always this double-edged blade that we're kind of like playing with, because if we squeeze too hard, we cut ourselves, but then we're just like kind of wheeling it lightly, we can manage, but then squeeze just enough and then we kind of burn out. And so for my second question, it ties into the idea of politics and the conceptions between the Western and the traditional conceptualizations. And so through a Western lens, governance and politics tends to be a concept disconnected from nature, in contrast to the interconnectedness with the natural world that many Indigenous concepts of governance share. And so as youth, do you think it's still important for modern Anishinaabe leadership to be guided by culture and the principles of Inakonagewin to ensure a sustainable future for our people? So Savanna, if you want to take the floor.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Without our roots firmly planted in the ground and in the earth, like we're weak, and it's not who we truly are. So, like I myself am always trying to learn as much as I can about my culture, and it's tough, as you've shared, to try and like learn the language and not just have little pieces of it, and actually understand where it comes from, because it comes from our land and it's a part of our spirit and our ancestors. So holding true to that and bringing that forward, because the Western world, it is so different from ours. And I guess in tying into that, like with the Algonquins of Ontario, they're not us. And I've written to Mayor Watson, and I've spoken with Minister Miller on this, and the Algonquin. I just want to share this with you, Leona. The Algonquins of Quebec do not acknowledge the AO, and we're like, it's really detrimental what the federal government has done by giving them that recognition, and how do we get them to undo that? Because I feel like for them, it would be like opening up a can of worms for other decisions that they've made across the country on behalf of First Nations peoples, or just to try to seem as if they are in, oh shoot, what's that $1 million word? It's to reconcile with us, you know. So that is the, I guess, the wind behind our sail, and the strength of who we are as a people is sticking to our traditional values and bringing that forward. Otherwise, we lose a piece of who we are. And we have to keep all the pieces together to bring that forward for our future generations, because we are part of that mathematical equation of human beings that brings forward our culture to our future generations. And we can't lose sight of that, and we can't forget it. And it's hard work, but it fills your spirit when you do connect, and however that is, because it looks different for everybody, and there's not one set path to that. And I just want to make that clear, because it's to the individual, and each individual adds to our collective. And it's just an interesting place to be for me right now, and trying to be of service to my nation, because I face this question every day, like when I wake up and I'm like, okay, wow, this is okay, it's still real life. Like I show up and I wake up and I show up to work, and I just try to do my best to keep one foot in front of the other while I'm taking in all of this information from each angle, and just try to hold true to who I am, because that is my gift that I'm trying to do my best to my people. And so, yes.
I actually wanted to mention, because you said you lived in Kelowna, and like the situation with West Bank First Nation, like with their move to self-determination. I think that there's something to be said and to be had for you to have, and your mother to have been a part of this. You've learned from this process, and given the circumstances over here in unceded territory, just like in our traditional knowledge, applying this within the context of our people, just like the situation with repatriation and how our community went to the West Coast and saw some of the protocols and how they adapted it from the cedar to the birch bark, and how we were able to, we're not stagnant, right? We're always adapting. We're always, evolving, yet we're always maintaining our identities and our culture, because that's what keeps the fire going and enables us to keep moving forward.
I had the opportunity to go to Haida Gwaii once, and of course the big cedar dugout canoes, and it was I shared I I come from the land of birch bark canoes, and you should have seen how they just like kind of looked at me and kind of laughed because, well, of course their waters are oceans as opposed to rivers. And but yeah, in regards to the self-government agreement, I feel like there's 3 communities in BC. I think maybe Tawasin. Oh shoot, I'm forgetting the other one, but it's on the island or the coast. It starts with an S, and then West Bank First Nations. And they're actually recognized as a nation within a nation. And the federal government realized that they gave them too much power and too much jurisdiction, like full jurisdiction. So now that might hinder future negotiations in the future to not be as free and true to who they are. So that's worrisome, and I don't know how to change that, but it's not a one-person problem, it's a nation-level thing.
It definitely is. It kind of creates a little bit of a ripple effect. But yeah, Ryder, would you like to continue?
You got Savanna. Yeah, so it's definitely, I find it's 100% we need to incorporate our traditional teachings and knowledge into our politics. And I feel like we've lost our way. We've steered really a long way from that, away from that. And I'm under KZ Band Registry. So when I'm going to talk about the KZ Bound Council, and it's run like we're like Western. It's run like a Western civilization. Everything that's just the way it works. It's very white. It's not Anishinaabe, like the voting system, everything's closed. It's all by ballots, but back then traditionally it was, okay, it's open. You choose amongst community who's going to be the next chief, who's going to be the next whatever. And it's so individualistic. Everyone just thinks about themselves. It's all about like, okay, well, how am I going to make myself better? How am I going to make money? How am I going to secure this? As opposed to how we used to live is, how is the community going to get better? How is the community going to get stronger? How is the community going to grow? But it's always, me. And that's because, the band council are wards of the crown, wards to the crown. I go to these band councils and I hear people bringing up ideas or issues, and I all I hear is, well, we can't because Indian Act says this. Well, we can't because government says this. Well, who are you? Like, what's your purpose here? Are you trying to please the government, or are you trying to please help your people? So I feel like, because of that band council, and your hands are tied, and we need to steer away from that. And I really like what Wawatie does is they have their band council, but they also develop their traditional council. They have their own traditional councils with their clan mothers and their chiefs, and they run traditionally, and they have a big impact and involvement in their community. And that's something that we need in our communities, so we could self-govern ourselves. Because I always say, in order to move forward, we need to go back. We need to go back and learn our teachings, learn our stories, learn our languages. Because without that, we have no sense of identity. Who are we as Anishinaabe? My grandpa tells me a story of, our DNA runs through the river. Yes, Western world says DNA is blood, DNA is, all these proteins and put together. But for my grandpa, he said our DNA runs in the river. And that's why people always live by the river, because that river fed all the plants, the berries, the trees, the medicines. It gave water to all the animals, and all of those things are things we put into our bodies. So that for me, just coming from that story, it's okay, that's where I'm from, but it also teaches me water is life, water is important, water makes up who we are. Same with our creation story, the creation story of how human beings were made, all the animals gathered together around the fire because the Creator said there's going to be a new being coming to this world. So each animal offered something to this new being. The bear came up first, put his tobacco, said to this new being, I'm going to offer him my body. And he put his tobacco in the fire. And from that smoke, you could see the shape of a body. Then the moose came he said to this new being, I'm going to offer him my limbs. So he put his tobacco on the fire, and you see arms and legs with the body. Then the beaver said, I'll offer him my teeth, eagle, my vision, and so forth. All these animals, one by one, came and offered something. And lastly, it was the flea. The last one that came was the flea. And he said to this new being, I'm going to offer him my brain. So he remembers and knows how small he is in this big universe. And then boom, and that's how man was made. And so that story and the teaching that comes with it is that we have to respect animals. We have to protect them. We have to love them. We have to nourish them, cherish them, because we wouldn't be here without them. And we still need them today because that's, they're the meat. That's how we fed ourselves, and just the way they lived. And so it's all these stories and teachings that we've lost and we've drived away from. But if we just go back and listen to those stories, then we'll understand, okay, well, how am I supposed to live as an Anishinaabe? And then especially the most important for me, I find, is language. It's so important because it's who makes us who we are. It gives us our identity. If we look across Turtle Island, you look at different nations, and yes, we have a lot of similarities, also a lot of different differences. But what really makes us who we are is our language. I'm Anishinaabe because I speak Anishinaabe. And same can be said with people in Europe. What differentiates different European countries? What differentiates France from England to Germany? It's the language. Same thing with the Asian countries, right? So that language is so important. But the difference between all these, European and Asian countries is, and people who come here to Canada, is like if you lose your language, you have a motherland to go back to and learn it. Where do we go? We're already home. Where do we go to learn our languages? We have nowhere else to go because we're already home. So for me, it's like we need that language because again, with the language comes teaching, just like these certain words. Like for me, the teaching I got, the word for tongue is my grandmother always told me I'd always be nervous to speak at these events or like public speaking at these marches. And my kukum would always say, speak from the heart, speak from the spirit, your mouth and your mind will do the rest automatically, just like a mechanism. And then I heard a story from someone else. I forget who it was out west, but it was another Anishinaabe person. And they said the word for tongue is udedli. And in that word, ude is heart, because if you speak from the heart, right? Like in science, Western science, the tongue is used to speak. So you're literally speaking from the heart, and that's the teaching that comes with it. And another one that I really like, example I use is the word for warrior. In English, you hear that word warrior. There's that word war, and war. What do I think when I hear war? I think violence. I think bloodshed. Like not good things. But in Anishinaabe, when you say a warrior, it's ogijida, which means to have a great heart. Because in order to be a warrior, you need to have a great heart to stand for your people. You need to have a great heart to speak for your people, and you're doing it out of a good heart. You're not just doing it for yourself. You're doing it out of love. You're doing it because, out of love. That's all. Love is such an important thing in our culture. So for me, it's really about going back. Like we need to go back, and we need to bring this forward. And that's why for me, I want to be a gym teacher. I see an opportunity there in my classroom to bring that language back, to bring the teachings back. I'll take KZ School for example. You walk outside the school gym, and there's a big open field. There's a bush. There's the lake right there. And that for me, I don't see just bush. I don't see just nature. I see a classroom. I see a classroom where kids could go out and learn who they are as an Anishinaabe, and then boom, and then so forth. All the generations that were hit by residential schools we're finally going to start healing all the generations that are still affected, because we are still affected today. Even though residential school stopped in 96, we're still feeling effects today. So it's important that we go back. We need to go back before we move forward.
Miigwech.
All right, Miigwech Ryder. I wholeheartedly agree that we need to go back to our traditional ways and values. And that is something that I've been feeling very strongly lately with our community, because when I think about how long language, culture, and traditions have been lost in Pikwakanagan, with that, our values and such as well. So that's why we've been getting ourselves into these terrible agreements with the government. And it's gotten to a point where, you know, we're asking the nuclear laboratory to, you know, no to the near surface disposal of their radioactive waste. But at the same time, we're also naming their buildings. So that was one case where I really felt, you know, we just need to go back and learn our ways. But who do we go back to? Where do we go? Because our knowledge holders and teachers, they're, you know, over the past couple of decades, they've, you know, passed on to the spirit realm. And we just don't have anything to go back to at this point. And so that is the heartbreaking reality of the Indian Act policies on Pikwakanagan. And essentially is cultural genocide of what our people are facing. And so that's why all these complex issues that we are now facing, we're at a loss of how we can even navigate through them. And so that's why, you know, community members now are now initiating grassroots-led movements such as these protests and petitions and such, because we just need to take a step back. But there's a push from the Canadian government to finalize these negotiations. And so it's been a daunting task, and it's been very difficult, because now they are projected to sign this agreement in the next couple of years. But a lot of us are saying, no, we can't. We don't have enough knowledge and wisdom and all of these teachings, you know, we're just going against it all. And sadly, the Pan Indian Act chief and councils, they are a system designed to fail, and it's just not working. So the idea of having a traditional sort of council is a very great idea, but in that sense, it's how do we get the leaders to even agree to that? You know, we're all so tied into this economical paradigm, and people, it's a lot about the money. You know, this is almost $1 billion agreement, and those in the leadership positions, they're making almost $100,000 a year for, you know, making these decisions on our behalf, on your behalf. And it's been frightening. A lot of the community members, they have been feeling very scared, depressed at this point, because we don't know what to do anymore. And with everything going on, you know, we're passing through this $1 billion agreement. And with that, they're also trying to negotiate a self-government process so that we can become self-sustainable and break away from the Indian Act. Well, that sounds ideal in that, but it's not, with the way things have actually rolled out. In my opinion, we're not anywhere near ready for that. If, you know, we're open to accepting a one-time $1 billion deal and 1.3% of our territory back. And within this agreement, this is it. Like, they don't want to make any more agreements on this territory. They want to sign it and finalize it and put it in stone. So this, I feel like, does set precedent for future negotiations. like, you know, you guys mentioned the West Bank First Nations and such like that, where they felt like they were given too much power. Well, now with this one, we're given very little power. But we're being told this is the best thing that we can take, so we might as well just go with it, which has consequences and which leads to like the destruction of our nation as a whole. Once this goes through, a part of the agreement was to relinquish our reserve title and transfer it to a fee simple title. So with this, we'll become a municipality. This is something that community members have always known. And we were told that we are liars and we are misinformed. We don't know, but they don't tell us yet. In a letter from Chief Wendy Jocko to the Prime Minister, they were asking them to rescind that part of the agreement of relinquishing our reserve title lands. So we have lost control. We're losing a lot of control as protectors of this territory. We don't have, once this agreement goes through, we won't have any say on that. It'll be the Algonquins of Ontario, and they are like, you guys don't recognize them, and neither do we, and we haven't. There is some people in there as members who are true non-status Anishinaabe Algonquins, but they're not as much, like they don't account for as much as like the 8,000. So it was last year, it was presented to us that literally half of their membership is non-Algonquin at all, or maybe even non-Indigenous. So we're currently trying to navigate through those issues, and they've opened up an Algonquin enrollment tribunal process. But why wasn't this done before even the AIP signing? I don't know. That's why this whole process has been completely backwards for us. And so with this, I believe that, you know, the leaderships need to listen to the people as a whole. What do we want? And we're trying to send petitions out at this moment to, you know, have those, you know, wishes of behalf of the community respected, to protect the reserve lands and our territory as a whole, because we don't want to cede it. This is the whole part of the agreement, is to extinguish and exterminate us. And that's not what the initial intention of with this, you know, process. We did petition for a treaty. Like I mentioned, we weren't a part of the historical numbered treaties. So we just wanted, you know, an agreement where we can share this territory. We have to accept that these people are here, but, you know, they're taking more and more of our territory. And, you know, there's still so much crown land within this territory that they have ownership of, but they're only giving us 1.3% back. And that all of this and all goes against any like traditional values Anishinaabe people have. Which
Miigwech. I really understand and get get the whole picture of where you're coming from, where you're talking about, because when we talk about the influence that Indian Act governance systems has had on our communities and on our people, it's in a lot of cases, communities are ran more like businesses than actual communities, where, you know, favor is given more into the, you know, people who are holding more of the power and balance and stuff. And so one of the things I've noticed is that, you know, we talk about one of the teachings of Widukudadwin, which would be, you know, like mutual aid and reciprocity. And this is something that's very much lacking in our communities. And, you know, I see it. I see it in KZ. I see it in Tagalog. I see it. There's this where there's a struggle. People have kind of strayed away from the values and the principles of there's a lot of talk about our leadership and Inakonagewin, but there's really a lot of lacking of maintaining and practicing those principles in life. So it's easy for leadership to go around and talking about that, but when they're not practicing those things and actually implementing them into their own life, it doesn't actually follow through into the leadership. And so which leads me to my next question, which is about education. And so education is intrinsically intertwined with the constitutional principles of Inakonagewin. Without education in the modern world, we may lose and lack the capacity to successfully govern ourselves as communities and as a nation. And although education through the eyes or lens of settler societies perceived through institutional conditioning, diplomas, and degrees, within Anishinaabe society, education also implies the knowledge of the environment, waters, history, language, and ceremonies. So my question is, do you feel that you or youth from your community are recognized by your community for the work of carrying on and practicing traditional forms of education?
There's a really strong push to get that out there and to get all those little minds of all those little children that are rising up, and to get them connected and to maintain that, and so they can carry that and have that tool in their toolkit of being like who they are. And it's tough, but the world is opening up more to realizing that they can't keep our culture from us anymore, through how like the banning of the potlatch, and that was detrimental to the West Coast, their economic world and how they functioned, and how they made us have to have passes to be able to leave the reserve back in the day within our own Mushaman Cookum's lifespan. That wasn't that long ago. And it's wild how much damage was caused in 2 generations. And then now we're all trying to heal from that and suffering the traumas of being intergenerationally attached to those the root pain and the root crimes that were committed against our people. So we have to revitalize it and keep moving it forward and push for the continuity of that, and not have it just be a phase where, okay, this is cool, let's do this. We need full support to heal, and it's also within the individual, but to grow strong allyships and to share our culture, because people will come to Quebec and, as an example, and I'm like, okay, well, it's French-speaking province, but prior to colonization, it wasn't even 500 years ago, Anishnabe Mowin was everywhere within our Nitakanan. And that wasn't that long ago, and there's so much work to do to revitalize and to keep it strong and to keep it going for our future generations. Can you repeat the question again, Emilio, please?
Yeah. Do you feel that you or youth from your community are recognized by your community for the work of carrying on and practicing traditional forms of education? Or, just we're seeing a very big resurgence of moose hide tanning and hide practice. Mm-hmm. And just the act of doing that, it represents the the work that is governed within Onakanagewan to create policies, right? When you're processing and working that. And so, I mean, I'm seeing a lot of revitalization within our communities, especially for young folks. I mean, like there's more mobilization now, even for like people that are like really kind of just coming into their youth, young ones, like they're really kind of like just taking things full force, right? And so it's pretty amazing to see these things that are happening. And Leona had mentioned that Pikwakanagan is struggling with culture and whatnot, right? And one of the first main and major aspects of the Nakanagewan is, the operation of ceremony before everything, especially before you're going into things and stuff. And so I think that with the loss of ceremony and the loss of cultural teachings to guide our people, it's really impacted the way, of course, the way we govern ourselves, but the way we appreciate those that are practicing and continuing that knowledge. I mentioned a while ago how like when we're walking in both worlds, right, and we're trying to save what we can of our culture, and sometimes, in my own experience, sometimes it's a little frustrating to see to be an individual that's really working a lot to learn and preserve it and also pass on knowledge, right? Because of course, like, I don't want to say that we're burdened with the duty, but it's bestowed onto us to maintain and pass it on. But when we're not getting, the help or not necessarily recognition, but when we end up doing a lot of the work alone, we become burned out, right? And so it's a lot of work to preserve the culture. And I think it's important that we start recognizing and rewarding those that are maintaining that form of education, because it is education, right? Like it's swinging outside. But yeah, that's along the lines of like the idea that we're going for this one. Oh, sorry about that. Downtown Montreal,
But the hunger's there. And we have to feed it the right foods, per se, to what are the foundations of our culture as Anishinaabe people. And I feel like it'll only get stronger as more and more learn and carry that forward. And there's nothing quite like tanning a hide, especially a moose hide. It's one way to stay out of trouble and to get really soft hands and really strong biceps.
Well, that's what it is too. It's culture and like cultural education is also a form of intervention and prevention. Mm-hmm. I believe this is very true, and given the circumstances in our communities and many other communities across Turtle Island, there's a lot of this need mm-hmm. in prevention and intervention, and I believe that culture is very, very much a way to help guide our youth and the next generation out of this darkness.
Mm-hmm. Feed our spirits.
Yeah, we're giving them that fire to light their way, right? We're always trying to keep that, paying it forward. Mm-hmm. So I don't know if anyone else wants to take the floor.
Yeah, we got Savanna. There, like Savannah said, there is definitely a big push, and there's a hunger for it, and like you see it within the community. Like you said, the moose hides they're coming up a lot more. Even gathering sap in the spring, you're seeing a lot more families doing that. So you are seeing a resurgence, but there's definitely more that we can be doing. Our elders are definitely there; they're very present, and they're there to offer what we have. It just I wish more of us youth were there to we're able to be there to listen and learn, but. Like again, we have to have that one foot in the Western and then one foot in the traditional. And both forms of education are important for sure, equally important, but so different. It's like Western learning. You sit in the classroom, you listen to someone talk, you read and you write. You go home, you memorize it. It's all memory, all mind, and your intelligence is it's based off of a grade, right? That's how you're determined. That's how, okay, you're strong because you have high grades. Well, maybe they're not strong in the book smarts, as you would say, but they have other gifts, they have other talents that are useful and that the world needs. So it's like the education system that we have now, it really, especially for us Anishinaabe people, it really limits us. It really holds us back. I feel like all post-secondary students are running a 100-meter race, but everyone else that's not Indigenous is starting at the 70-meter line, because we're starting at the start line back here, but everyone else has their head start. Everyone else, has everything to them. But us, we're moving away from home. We're moving away from our families, and already there, how strongly us Anishinaabe are tied to the land and our families, our community. So we have to remove ourselves, put ourselves in a different environment. And then while we're in that environment, we can't learn so much about our knowledge because we have to learn about white man's knowledge. And it's a mix. It's really tough to do. And that's why I say us youth can't be there, is because we're stuck in this Western world. And, but it's important to have, my grandpa, my great grandpa, Leona Commanda, always said, and always told my grandmother, and now my grandmother tells me, he says, education was used as a tool to destroy our people, but we're going to use it as a tool to get our people out of poverty. So we need to give, and that's what he says, and we need to give the white man back his language, give him back his language. Again, going back to that aspect of language, for me, I don't really like the word Indigenous, because that's not who I am. My Cookums taught me that if you go back to documents all the way back to England, France, and even the Vatican, we're known as Indians or North American Indians. We're not known as Indigenous. We're not known as Aboriginal. So we need to keep calling ourselves, we're Indians, we're North American Indians, because that's what the legal documents say. If we start calling ourselves Indigenous people, then all of them will be like, oh, well, we serve North American Indians. We serve Indians. We don't serve Indigenous people. And it's also with the language, it's like sugarcoating stuff. Like when we talk about residential schools, no, they're not schools. Schools is where you go to learn. These are concentration camps. The bodies aren't being discovered, they're being recovered. Our elders and our survivors have been saying for decades, search those schools. So it's just about giving back the language, and that's a sacrifice we have to make. But on the traditional side of knowledge, not only are you learning about the world, but it's also, teaching you how to live your life, how to survive, I guess. Growing up, one of my responsibilities as the young man in the house was make a fire in the winter, keep the house warm. So, that's what I did growing up, pile of wood, you do all that. And in high school, I remember going over to my friends were like, oh, let's have a fire. So we go to my friend's house who were French, because like Savanna, my parents sent me to a French school as well, because they said, you live in Quebec, you're going to need French. So go to my friend's house and are like, okay, like who's making the fire? And then they all just stood there like they didn't know what to do at all. And I thought making a fire was like everyone knew how to do that. And so I was like, oh, I guess I got to do it. So I, start gathering my supplies, and, they bring out the gasoline, and I'm like, where's the Weegawas? Where's the birch bark? But it was like, for me, for me, that was just regular. That was just a known thing. But and it's only then where I realized, okay, well, making a fire, it's a skill, it's a survival skill, but that's just, how we learned growing up. And like you said, Emilio, when the babies are in their tuckanoggins, they're always around, they're just watching. That's how we learned. We're oral people, right? We learned by listening, we learned by watching. And that's why in these schools, it's like everything's written, you read, and that's why we're at such a disadvantage. But it's funny because my mom, she's a very strong worker. She's a hard worker. And whenever we have these culture camps, she puts everyone to work, if you're a teenager, if you're a kid, if you're an adult, the Cookums and Chomes get the rest. But like regardless your age, she's keeping them busy because they're learning. And and especially with the younger children, she puts them to work, and then, other people might see it as child labor. But my mom likes to call it knowledge instilling, because that's what it is at the end of the day. They're learning. Yes, they're working, but they're learning. And eventually down the line, it's going to help them. For me, myself, I moved away from my family, but because of the way my mom raised me, I could take care of myself. I know how to live on my own. I know how to cook. I know how to wash my clothes, take care of myself. And all of that was just done by watching what our people do. And it's very hard for us in that system, white educational system, to thrive and be at the same level as everyone, because we learn differently than everyone else, but we still manage, right? We Anishinaabe people put ourselves in that white man's world. We'll manage, we'll survive. It might be tough, but we'll manage, we'll get through it. Put a white man in the bush, good luck. So both forms of education are equally important. But for us, it's about finding that balance, and that's what's tough. And even at that, my grandpa always says, yes, education is super important. All my grandparents actually, even though education was used to destroy them, to abuse them, and put them through like all these horrors, they still push for education no matter what. Regardless, they still say, get educated. It's important our people get educated, because our people need to be on the same level as the rest of Canada. But my grandpa also said, don't forget about lived experience. Yes, it's good to have your degree. It's good to know all of these things, but don't forget about lived experience, because that is equally as important as education. You'll learn so much just by talking and listening to someone and see what they've been through. So kind of went off the question a little bit, but yeah, for me, that's like education. It's two different types, but very, very strong, equally strong. Which.
Okay, so yeah, for me, education is an important thing for passing on the knowledge to like others, especially in my community who, we've lost so much. I have a friend who, Amber Hine, and maybe some of you guys might know of her. So she has been putting the work into revitalize the traditions of moose tanning, like moose hide tanning. And so that has been a wonderful aspect to see happen within my community. And many do appreciate that. So, on the topic of going back to the land, that's where our education does come from. And for me personally, when I felt like when I was in the bush, I just felt that the land was calling me home, and I need to learn the ways of the bush. So I've also kind of been, on that journey myself too, because in a sense, I do feel like there's going to be a time in my life where that is going to be essential for my survival or such. My family, we do hunt, but we don't know what to do with the moose hides. It's a lot of work. And so that's why I'm very appreciative of my friend Amber for showing me those skills. And so now I won't let my family's moose hides go to waste. And if I did have space in my freezer, I would do them all. But it's a lot. It takes a community, that's for sure. And so yeah, like here in Pikwakanagan, the only closest schools that we have are off reserve, in a Catholic school, in a public school, and those are our only two options. And so I say that, even living in my community has colonized me, and that's a sad truth. And so I didn't grow up with a lot of these teachings. I did have my teachers in the schools and stuff, but one to teach me true Anishinaabe traditions and language. We did have a little bit of that, but I wasn't completely immersed into that. And so for me, I feel like there's a duty that I have to fulfill to learn the language, to learn the ways of the bush. And my dream was to, have a camp or something, where we immerse ourselves in just that and, reclaim those ways of being Anishinaabe and such. So there's a lot of work that needs to be done here in Pikwakanagan, and it's taking its time, but at the same time too, with a lot of political stuff going on, it's putting our community on a hold in such way that we aren't able to explore our identities more and our culture and such. And the only thing that we get is our powwow once a year. And I mean, during COVID, we didn't have that. And, to me, a powwow is more of a social than like a ceremony or anything like that. So that to me, just, it wasn't until I was an adult, actually, that this is how bad that, we've lost so much. Because in my opinion, I thought that, I was very isolated and I didn't know too much about what was going on outside of my community. So for me, I feel like the reserve has just assimilated a whole bunch. Yeah. I hope that answers your question well.
Miigwech, I'm kind of noticing. I think that there really needs to be some, of course, communication, but I think there really needs to be community to community relationship building, because I know that each community does have their strengths culturally and even spiritually as well. And I think that within the idea of reciprocity, I think that we could help each other out as communities if we were to reconnect and work together more and kind of like rebuild these burnt bridges. And it kind of leads me into this my next topics here is let's see, how do I. So given the circumstances of colonization, the Indian Act, and provincial boundaries that have been imposed on our people, it's had a visible impact on our communities and nation's governing system, which has in turn had an effect in the current state of relations within our nation. Today, nations are pushing towards sovereignty and successfully moving away from the Indian Act, implementing their own constitutional rights to self-governance. And so, excuse me, I guess like it kind of comes back to that theme of like, self-determination, and then your experience, Savanna, too, within seeing this whole movement. And as you mentioned, how it may actually be even tougher because of the situation in BC. And so I want to ask you is like, because of our particular situation as Algonquin-Anishnabe, we always talk about the idea of our territory being unceded, and sometimes we wonder, what does that really mean? And so I'd like to ask you is, what do you think about the idea of moving away from the Indian Act and moving towards sovereignty and self-governance? And like, how could you see or envision that happening?
Well, that's a really good question. One aspect which causes a major issue within our traditional territory is the fact that not all of our communities in Quebec have an actual land base. So they're just settlements. So they don't even have any banned lands, and then now they're in negotiations to try and better their situations and actually get what they deserve. Because pre-Confederation, the federal government wanted to put the whole nation in 2 reserves, one being Temiskaming First Nations and then Kitigan-Zibi. And not everybody was okay with that because that's not who we are, right? We were nomadic and our territory is so vast. So that causes a major complexity to that because of the land-based issue, and that takes so much time also to resolve. Nothing's simple and nothing's easy. And with every election that happens at the federal or municipal or provincial levels, things change and then things get stagnant and people switch over. And the same goes within our band councils. They're given monies to provide services and programs for the communities, but it's only a little amount based on population. And so that causes a lot of disparities because it's not a one equation for each community. So that conversation, I'm sure, is happening at a lot of dinner tables within family units and at the tribal council level. We're getting there, but with all, like at the nation level with all 11 communities, that's really tough. And I know that our leadership sees the past and like walks forward into the future. But I think it's a trick that the federal government and the Indian Act did to like help like divide the people within. But we're also reclaiming it and trying to work together at whatever level we can on and find the commonalities and focus on those points to bring that forward and to work together in with consensus and all in full agreement. That interest and that need is recognized and it is there, but it's a really big issue. And to have the whole Algonquin Nation united would be everything. We'd be stronger and we're working there, and it'll take time, but we always have to have hope and have faith and bring that forward with us. And I wish we could just like blink our eyes and everything we want could be there automatically for us. So then we can forget about all the troubles and all the political fights that we have and could just like actually time warp back to when we were actually living on the land and we're practicing our actual nationhood in the way that is ours. And I just withheld from saying traditional because it's deeper than that. And I don't know, just like trying to carry that forward and to remember and then to see how things need to change and things ebb and flow. And I'm just proud to be an Algonquin-Anishnabe woman and just trying to encapsulate it all and just be conscious and aware of everything and moving forward in this walking life. Like it's a trip. Anyways, I'll just end it up there.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Savanna. So the Indian Act, that one's very, very tricky. It's like something that we talk about at the dinner table too as a family, like Savanna mentioned, or was it Emilio? One of you mentioned that, but it's so tricky because yes, it's not good, and a lot of non-Indigenous people ask that as well, like, oh, well, why don't you just abolish it, get rid of it, like, you know? But it's not simple like that. It's like, as bad as the Indian Act is, and as bad as it restricts us, it holds up with the Constitution of Canada. You know, Indian Act can't override Constitution. Constitution can't override the Indian Act. And yes, the Indian Act restricts us a lot. It holds us down so much, but at the same time, it gives us what little rights we have, all these little tiny rights that we have, that Indian Act holds that, and it makes that strong for us, and that's where our case comes from. So it's not as easy as just being like, okay, well, we get rid of it, because if we get rid of it, then like, what do we have after that? Like, we got nothing to protect us, or like, so it's, and then I was gonna say, it's kind of, yeah, so it's kind of like, for me, the way I see it, it's like, you take that away from the Indian Act, and yes, it sucks having a status card. It sucks being recognized as a number by the government, but that number gives us rights. And like, if we don't, without that card, like if we get rid of the Indian Act, then we're just Canadians like everyone else. We're not Indians after that. We're just Canadians. And then, oh, well, you're Canadian. You get the same rights, you get the same privileges as every other Canadian. But that's not the way it should work. And it reminds me of what Trudeau did, Pierre Elliott Trudeau tried to do in '69 with the white paper. It's the same thing, right? He had good intentions, so I've heard, to abolish the Indian Act and put in place this new so-called white paper. But same situation back then. I've heard stories of elders being like, no, like, if you take this away from us, then we're Canadians as everyone else. We're not. We lose our identity that, the government has given us the rights that we have, this little tiny stuff that we have. So it's very complicated. It's definitely gonna be a long process to derive away from that. But it definitely, whatever the next step is, or whatever policies put in place next, definitely 100% has to be made by Anishinaabe people, like in North American people. Like, we can't have these so-called experts, these politicians, government officials doing this stuff for us, because they don't know what we need. They don't know what we've been through. They haven't lived the life we have. So it wouldn't make sense, it just wouldn't make sense. And for me, like, the first step to that is to all be on a level of understanding, right? Like, all of us, like, whether you be Black, white, Asian, Anishinaabe, we all have to be on that same level of understanding. And I take that to, like, even like a smaller scale, like not having people do stuff for us. It's like taking college courses. For me, I took a Indigenous, what was it called? It was an Indigenous studies course. It was but taught by a white man. Like, no disrespect to him. He was such a great teacher. He was a very kind man, and he was really understanding what everything I was going through. No disrespect to him at all. I am really glad I had him as a teacher. I had him twice, actually, or maybe 3 times. And but at the end of the day, it's a white man teaching our history, our knowledge, right? And it just doesn't make sense. And I feel like that's how it always is. We always have people speaking for us, doing things for us. It's almost like they see us as lesser, and we can't do it ourselves. We're weak, we're not smart. So, we need people to do it for them because they don't know what's good for them. That's not true at all, Yeah. And so it's like, it's tough. It's very tricky. And I know there's a lot of allies out there who want to help out and try to help out. And but it's just almost like sometimes they overstep boundaries. They don't know their boundaries. It's like, don't stand for in front of us and speak for us. Don't stand behind us. That's what we need. We need you to support us, because it sucks. But at the end of the day, it's white people's voices that are going to change white government officials' minds. They're never going to listen to us Indians. Never, ever, ever. It's going to be white people telling their white leaders, smarten up, wake up, do something. We need to change this. And but that level of understanding comes. That level of understanding comes from being all on the same level. Because if we're all on the same level, then we all respect each other. We all have compassion for each other, and we all love each other. And then we move forward together as one. We walk together, one step at a time. So for me, the Indian Act, it's possible, but it can't be done as quickly as people think. It can't be just done like that, and it's going to be a long process. It's going to be a long, hard fight. But we're resilient people, right? We've been fighting since 1492. It's a couple of more 100 years. Like we do it for the next generation. We always 7 generations ahead. We always make sure next 7 generations are gonna have what they have, and hopefully more in the future. They'll have more, and they won't have to live through the struggles we've been through and the struggles our ancestors fought through. So that's what I gotta say about that. Miigwech.
Miigwech.
Hello. All right. So on the topic of the Indian Act, to me, I do see the issues with it and how it's caused so much destruction to our nations, and it has genocidal policies intertwined with it. But at the same time, I do see the point of maintaining that, at least for now, before we enter into a self-government agreement. And so that is the only option that Canada is giving us to break away from the Indian Act. But this whole process has been built from, white negotiation lawyers with the AOO. So the self-government process and the land claims negotiations, those two concepts are intertwined with each other, and they both go hand in hand. And at this point, I don't feel like we are anywhere close to achieving a true self-government agreement that is going to be beneficial to our community. And so that's the part that my community is trying to resist, because with a one-time deal of almost $1 billion, 1.3% of territory back, it's not enough to build a nation from. They are taking away our land, culture, language, resources, everything that makes us Anishinaabe peoples. And so that is the struggle of the Algonquins and Pikwakanagan and, in Ontario at this point, because we do have relations, Algonquin relations throughout this territory, not just in Pikwakanagan. And I'm not talking about the other 9 groups involved. I'm talking about that some didn't move to reserve lands. And so they were just kind of settled on white territory. And we are very closely tied with the Nipissings as well, culturally and linguistically. So I do, see a point that we need to unite ourselves as a strong nation, but we can't just, only group together the Algonquins of Ontario. I'm not talking about the AO, I'm just talking about as a whole, but exclude our kin, in the other communities in Quebec. And so at this point, I really do feel the need that there has to be more connections, and that more connections made amongst ourselves. And that's why I am so thankful to even be here today and invited by Emilio to speak on this, because we just need to be heard, really. This process has been very isolating, and we've been told that we're misinformed, and that we don't know what we're talking about. But we have read the agreement, and the entire document was written by the white negotiation lawyers within the AOO Corporation, and they do not know what us Anishinaabe people need. And they don't know what kind of things we need to, build the strong nation from. They're only doing it from a white man's perspective. And so that is only to just appease the government's requests. Like, all of this process of extinguishment is, to me, it's just the white people giving back to themselves. They want to take away our land and resources and people and culture and such, because they knew that if they hit us where it hurts, there will be nothing left of us left. So yeah. So at this very point, I do feel the need that there needs to just walk away from the negotiations, to, group together with the community and not just make this, Indian Act Band Council's decision. This needs to be a collective decision, not just from our community, but also members of other communities. Your voices matter as well. And like I said, there's more kinship and relations ties with, say Kittigan-Zibi, for example. I know people who have relations from both sides, and that really matters. To exclude that as the first point of the agreement, it's terrible. It's genocidal, and that is the sad truth for the Algonquins.
Miigwech. Yeah, especially given the circumstances with the white paper, really, it's with that first move, it's a way of trying to pull the carpet from under us, right? And trying to do it. All the nations, even during that time in the 60s, right, we're all at different levels of their, where they're at. And for the settler colonial government to propose and then impose this proposition leaves us without time to actually establish and kind of get ourselves, build our foundation to be able to counter that type of decision. And I think in terms of the relationships between our communities, Algonquin-Anishnabe communities, both in Ontario and Quebec, even with this whole Ontario agreement, I mean, there's communities that are on the Ontario side that, we look at Waugashig. Waugashig is recognized amongst the council of, the Anishinaabe Council, but they are a community from Ontario. And along, the borders of the Kistabish, there's whole communities that are more recognized today as Ojibwe, but they're Anishinaabe. But back in the day, they were just as much as our relatives, just as much as the Nipissing, because even in my family, my great grandmother was a Commanda, and so Commandas were related all the way up from Kittigan-Zibi as far as Sudbury. And with the imposition of of course the Indian Act and all these other things that came about to divide us with these names, right, to pinpoint us with these names and all these things. And I think that coming back to unity and reestablishing our foundations together with an Anishinaabe constitution, and actually working together to build things and kind of put our knowledge together, both cultural knowledge, spiritual knowledge, educational knowledge, all these things matter. And these are all the factors that help not just govern our society, but help create a healthy and functional society. And I had this one question, but it's a bit, of course, it's a bit complicated. With the situation of the Algonquin-Anishnabe Nation, the fact that there are, I say 3 councils, but there's 2 councils, but one that's really problematic right now, and it's causing a lot of issues. And I'm not sure how much awareness is happening within communities, because of course our communities are struggling internally already with a lot of social issues. Just hearing your share your personal experiences in the beginning, is that the reality for many of us Algonquin and Anishinaabe is that we're coming from our lived experiences as who we are. We're not archival Indians. You know what I mean? We're not based off this one ancestor from the 1716 or 1500s. We are those descended from those who have experienced all of these harsh impacts that the Indian Act, and not just the Indian Act, but even going way back, we are descended from those continuous lines up into present day. And so I actually wanted to move towards this other question that involves more of the environment, because we're always talking about how much the land is important to us, and the land is where our constitutionalism is rooted in. And all of our teachings, our education, and our survival was based on the observation and understanding of our territory and how we've adapted and how we've managed to survive for thousands of years, through the Ice Age and into modernity and all these, and then, and then colonization. And then we're still here, and we've always managed to adapt. And so this next question is, the environment is one of the greatest concerns for many Anishinaabe, and in many cases are often directly impacted by decisions made by both Indigenous leaders and settler politicians. The impacts resource extraction has had on the land and water has trickled into the health of wildlife, vegetation, and people that live out on the territory and harvest what the land provides. Sustainability, sustainable development, and green alternatives have proven to be more and more possible today. Given the current state of the world, do you think that Algonquin-Anishnabe leadership should take the path of sustainable practices guided by cultural values and principles of Inakonagewin to ensure prosperity for 7 generations from now? So
that's a big one. And there are communities that are totally anti the expropriation of the minerals and forestry and mining. But Quebec is a beast, and its extractive economy, it doesn't work for us. And they just see dollar signs and projected annual returns on whatever resource development they pursue. And it's just numbers to them. And it's very frustrating. But then also there's communities that are so remote where it's hard and their population isn't that big. So then it's hard for them to get those funds to come in and provide the services and programs for the communities. And it's that double-edged sword that you were talking about when we first engaged in this conversation. I feel like it's really up to those that are coming up and those that know that there are other ways to go about having an economy within our territory and having it be green. And it's just, I wonder how long some of those agreements are with some mining companies and what the remediation factors within those private agreements that are made with the individual communities look like. It's a lot of questions, and we know that we only have one earth and we only have one territory, and we are the stewards of this land. And what do we want to leave for our future generations if we don't have these conversations right now? And they've been happening for many, many, many years. It's a really tough one, and I have no jurisdiction there. But it's an obligation that we have to carry forward for our future generations, and we have to have those conversations with leaderships and build new partnerships that are sustainable and good, because that's what we need. And we just need to engage in those conversations to help do our part. Maybe liaise a little bit. Thank you.
Great.
Savanna. It's definitely important to bring that culture back to help with the environment for sure. It's needed. It's a must. We can't continue living the way we are now because there's going to be nothing left. We call this planet Jojoakia Mother Earth for a reason. Because like a mother, when we were a baby, she provided us with everything we needed to grow and live and survive. Without our mothers as baby, how we would have died. We wouldn't have been here. We wouldn't have been able to have the proper needs to keep living a healthy life. And it's the same thing with our Jojo Mother Earth. She gives us everything we need so we can live, so we can breathe, so we can nourish ourselves. You know, in creation, and in the creation story, how it goes, right? It started off with water. From water came land. From that land came the plant life. From that plant life came the animal life. And then from the animal life came human beings. So we're the last ones to come out of that story. But if you flip that order around, it shows that how much we need every other aspect that came before us. You know, you take away human beings, animals, plants, water, or earth survive. You know, they live. But you take away water, take away land, everything else falls. So it just goes to show how dependent we are on the land as human, not just Anishinaabe people. I'm talking about all human beings. You know, how it goes to show how dependent we are, and we need to find a way to be economic self-sufficient. We've been relying too long on our land. We've been exploiting our land for too long, far too long, and we shouldn't have even done that in the first place. Never should have been exploiting our mother like that. You know, would you mistreat your mother like that? Your own mother. You know, you ask yourself this: would you mistreat your mother? Would you hurt your mother? Would you exploit her just for a piece of paper? You know, when there's no air to breathe, when there's no water to drink, no food to eat, what's that money going to use? What are you going to use that money for? You know, how good is that money going to be? So we need to find a way to be economic self-sufficient. And we have the means, we have the resources, and we have the smarts. And the Anishinaabe people are so intelligent. There's so many ways we can make our money, but the easiest cop-out is land. It's just because it's there. And that's not who we are as Anishinaabe people. That was never our way. That was never our responsibility. Our responsibility was to take care of the land. You know, make sure, again, coming back to the 7 generations, you only take what you need and you take care of the land, because the next 7 generations are going to need it. So it's a dire need. And like Savanna says, we need to do this now. It needs to happen today. You know, it's for too long. It has been, okay, you know, one day it'll happen. We'll work on it one day. But the time is now. We can't keep progressing the way we are now, because our mother just can't handle it. You know, she's been through so much for I don't know how many years, but it's time, you know, we start healing and we start, you know, giving back to her, you know, taking care of her properly like we used to and how we should have been. So yes, we definitely need to bring that culture back into our ways and to be economic self-sufficient. Which.
Okay. So for me, I do feel that the land is very important in protecting and preserving. But here as well, our land is sick because the settler colonial government has established themselves on our most fertile parts of our territory. And they've extracted the resources from the territory, and they've never given back to us. And so, you know, for the last, you know, ever since Pikwakanagan has been established, you know, we've been brought to this area where the land is no good. And because of that, our people have gotten sick. And so the control and the dynamic between Anishinaabe and the government, it's been very like harmful to us and the environment. And you know what we're seeing here, like we don't have much say of what happens within our territory, and only now we've fought to, you know, have a say at the table for, you know, consent. You know, we don't want radioactive particles to be stored away in the land. At one point, it's going to just seep into the waters, and then all the wildlife and plant life that's going to be poisoned. You can't go back from that. You can't reverse that. It's once the damage has been done, it's, you know, it's permanent at that point. And so, yes, we need to take action now to stop that kind of harm from being done to, you know, our Mother Earth. And, you know, that's a dream for myself, my son, and the future generations, you know, ahead. I want, you know, to us to not have to depend on so much of like this materialistic needs that the government has imposed on us. You know, like I think so much about how every little piece of plastic, you know, and garbage that I have to, you know, dispose of and recycle, you know, it's a lot. Even like for me, you know, I wish I could only just take what I need, but at the same time, all that's been taken in control from the government, and we can't access our own territory and use it the way as we were intended without us being called squatters or something, you know, get off of our crown land or whatever, you know what I mean? We don't have that no more. And so that's why a lot of these issues intertwined with the self-government and land claim negotiations process. It's a process that is designed to, you know, extinguish us. And our land is hurt because of it. You know, we're signing off the control that we have, you know, as the guardians and protectors of this territory. And it's sad that this is happening all throughout Turtle Island, essentially. So at this point, it really is sad, you know. I wish I could just go to the bush and, you know, hunt and drink the water, but I just can't know where it's that polluted, you know. And I even see that the wildlife now is getting sick. Yeah. You know, sometimes we'll go hunting and we'll get a moose only to just find out it's infested with like some sort of parasite. Yeah. That, you know, is one thing that, you know, it's sad. It's a sad reality for us. And I hope one day that, you know, with the healing that we do as individuals, that will reflect on Mother Earth, and, you know, we all can heal together. Yeah.
So we are out of time for today, but I do have one more statement that I would like to kind of just send you off with to ponder and maybe even think about and discuss it at the dinner tables with your families and friends too. And so, you know, as Anishinaabe, we grew up learning and hearing about the 8 fire prophecies, right? All the prophecies and all the teachings that have come with it, and the different steps and aspects that happen throughout this timeline. And a lot of the times I think that, you know, we're at this crossroads. And so at the crossroads of the 7th and 8th fire, we as Anishinaabe must actively be aware of the choices that we make in this present time, and how that can affect the destiny of us Anishinaabe in the next 7 generations. Much has been lost, yet much remains and continues to be revived. Moving forward, we must acknowledge the wisdom passed on to us from 7 generations back, practice it and apply the knowledge in our lives within the modern context, and pay it forward to the next 7 generations. And so I just wanted to leave this kind of like idea with you as we sign off, is that in the vision of the future, like would you and could you see the implementation of an Algonquin-Anishnabe constitutional ratification, solidified and written through treatise and symbolized in new modern wampum belts for each community recognized and involved? And so although we can't go into this now, you know, we always talk about the importance of our culture and modernity. And, you know, we learn a lot about the historical wampum belts, and, you know, a lot of them are museums or being put away and kept safe. But within this modern context, I think moving forward and bringing two people together in unity, it would be really important to bring that aspect because it symbolizes such an important thing within our cultures. So I just wanted to kind of sign off and leave you with that idea and let it linger and, you know, share that idea with your friends and family. And I want to say miigwech for coming today. And I really appreciate this conversation. And I really appreciate all of you as being here and taking the time to be with us. So, miigwech.
Leona and Savanna for your words and your sharing your experiences, and miigwech Emilio for putting this together. It was it was an honor to be here with you all.
Chimigwech Ryder, you have a lot of knowledge in Savannah too, and Chimigwech Emilio for inviting me on here to come and speak.
I wish we were all together in person. But miigwech and well, let's be friends.
All right, thank you. Yeah, thank you so much, guest speakers, Emilio, and organizers for this great conversation. Thank you, audience members, for joining us online. And yeah, just a reminder that this conversation will be available as a recording on our YouTube at CU Force later today. With that, we're going to close up the meeting. Thanks, everyone, and have a great afternoon.
If you have an idea for a podcast, please let us know. You can contact us by email at info.4@concordia.ca or find us on social media at CU Fourth Space. We'd love to hear from you. The Fourth Space podcast is hosted by me, Douglas Moffat, and produced with Anna Vakovac. Editing by Chanel Lees Marshall and Maximus Delmar. And our theme music, courtesy of Super Carmen. Thanks for listening.